We are walking down that freedom road. We're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down that freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Walking down that freedom road, we're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down that freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Oh, mama, it's been so hard. I look at the world and my heart gets heavy. She says, child, keep your hands on the plow. You gotta make a new way. Oh, Papa, it's been so long. A voice cries out, you're just not ready. He says, keep your eyes on the prize. We're gonna make it someday. Oh, we're walking down that freedom road. We're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down that freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Some say we're wasting our time. We're moving, chasing that dream. Not gonna pay them no mind. One step closer to the promised land. Hey, oh, hey, 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 oh, we're moving, keeping that fire burning, moving. Hey, we're never gonna let it go out. Moving, I feel that the tide is turning. Eyes on the prize, hands on that plow. Come too far to start turning back now. Standing on the banks of Jordan, we are wise and strong. And now we're walking down the freedom road. We're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down that freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Some say we're wasting our time. We're moving, chasing that dream. Not gonna pay them no mind. One step closer to the promised land. Walking down the freedom road, moving, chasing that dream. Walking down the freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Walking down the freedom road, oh, we're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down the freedom road, one step closer to the promise, closer to the promise, closer to the promised land. It's a song that started rumbling around in my head about 2 years ago. It's a song that I wish I'd written. But if I'd written it, I would have been about 7 years old at the time. I wasn't quite that precocious. And it came out of, well, another writer's experience. And as songs have their place in the world, it has stayed much too current. Come gather around, people, wherever you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept that soon you'll be drenched to the bone. If your time to you is worth saving, so you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are a-changin'. Well, come writers and critics who prophesize with your pen, keep your eyes wide, this chance won't come again. Oh, but don't speak too soon, for the wheel's still in spin. And there's no telling who that it's naming, for the losers now will be later to win, 'cause the times, they are a-changin'. Oh, come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall. For the ones who get hurt will be fools who have stalled. There's a battle outside, it's raging. It'll soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, 'cause the times they are a-changin'. Oh, the times they are a-changin'. Welcome mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Well, your sons and your daughters are beyond your command, and your old world is rapidly fading. Get out of the new one if you can't lend a hand, 'cause the times they are a-changin'. Oh, the times they are a-changin'. Oh, the line it is drawn, the curse it is cast. Slow ones now will later be fast, 'cause the present now, well, it's soon to be past. And the order is rapidly aging. The first ones now will later be last, 'cause the times they are a-changin'. Now if you think this battle for justice is done, that the fight against hatred is already won, well then open your eyes, 'cause it's only begun. It's a battle that's still worth the waging, and we'll never be free till we all rise as one, 'cause the times they are a-changin'. Spent so many restless hours watching time slip away, season by season come and gone, drifting day after day, caught off guard in a broken world. We try hard to keep pace. It's a wonder we make it through with any measure of grace. Mystics say we cannot know all that we're hoping to find until we learn to let it flow. Oh, open heart, open mind. Spend the hours, we play the game, turn up the volume and then pray to the heavens our magic ship will come in. But it's all about faith, it's all about trust. It's all about keeping your feet on the road when your dreams turn to dust. You know, it's all about hope that will keep you alive through the pain. When it's all you can do to start over again and again. It's all about love. We know that the road is hard. Some insist that it's fate. These opinions go on and on. Oh, but for the answers we wait. Still, whatever you may believe, oh, whatever helps you endure. There in the middle of doubt, there is one thing that's sure, that it's all about faith. It's all about trust. Oh, it's all about keeping your feet on the road when your dreams turn to dust. You know it's all about hope that will keep you alive through the pain. Oh, when it's all you can do to start over again and again. It's all about love. When your life feels so uncertain, all about love. When you feel so compromised, with work and with time, we rise. Spend so many restless hours, unresolved and alone. Still, it's never too late. Find your way home, because it's all about faith. Oh, it's all about trust. Oh, it's all about keeping your feet on the road when your dreams turn to dust. You know it's all about hope that will keep you alive through the pain. Oh, when it's all you can do to start over again and again. All about love. Thank you. So how y'all doing? My, we live in an interesting world. But we always have. I think it comes as a surprise to many of us when things do increase by some measure, but the pace of life, when I remember growing up in my neighborhood and the civil rights movement, when I was growing up, I was born in 1952, and certainly in my neighborhood and in Philadelphia where I grew up and all across America, the civil rights movement was happening all around us, and we just kind of every day got up and sort of did our thing. Powerful things were happening in the world. Martin Luther King Jr. was marching, and all around the world there were these amazing movements. And now, of course, we are 24/7 on our devices. So, and certainly the temperature of the world seems to have increased by some measure. But the fact of the matter is that the world has always been very much as we know it now. And I think, in a lot of sense, the question for me has been, or actually the perspective I've been using, is that much more has been revealed about who we really are. So that revelation is shocking in some ways, but this year has been an interesting one. I've been on the road for pretty much all of the year. It finally dawned on me that I could go home. There were all these wonderful things happening, and they kind of started about 3 or 4 years ago. Taking off after a 40-year partnership, taking off as a solo act, and finding myself out in America and in Germany and other places, and it's just things kind of rolling. And it's caused me to sort of really take a look back and kind of reconnect with things growing up. And one of the things that's helped me with that is I've been doing this show with Greg Greenway, who lived in the Boston area for years and years, and I've been doing a show with him called Deeper Than the Skin. And Deeper Than the Skin is a show that we do about our friendship, our 30-year friendship. We're born 3 days apart. And he was born in Richmond, Virginia in the South. I was born in Philadelphia in the North. And we grew up 3 days apart, but in very different narratives. So in looking at that show and sharing our separate narratives, I've had to really kind of look back at my own narrative and kind of see where I've risen from and get more in touch with the things that were going on in my early years, and certainly music was part of that in such a large way. I cannot remember a time, really, when music was not really present. Because even before I was singing in my church or singing in my house, we used to gather around the piano on Friday nights with my mother, my sister, and I, and we would sing for a couple of hours, We'd just sing hymns and then sing gospel and then sing Broadway songs or sing things that my sister found, And that's actually where I learned to do harmony, because they had the melody. So I had to go somewhere. But then again, there was also the time in my church. I love coming in and singing. This is such a wonderful church to sing in. I just thought, back to the time when my mother used to, I would say drag us to church, but she didn't drag us anywhere. She just said, "Get your butts ready, we're going out the door." It was a different time. She didn't ask us if we wanted to go, and had she asked us, we would have said no. But she didn't ask. Sunday mornings when we were fighting, trying to, my sister would say, "Okay, you be sick this week." Never worked. Helen Harris was a strong black woman, and she was going to get us into that church. She was going to make sure that we were there to hear those old folks singing those spirituals and those hymns. And before she died in 2003, I was able to actually thank her for being so purposeful and so persistent and so strong in her knowledge that we needed to be in that room. Because the songs that those folks were singing were songs that they'd brought with them on the black migration. Many of them came from Virginia or North Carolina or came from South Carolina, some even from Georgia in my church, but most of the folks had come and they had settled in Philadelphia, the promised land. They brought with them those songs and those stories and those testimonies of how they'd made it over. So when I heard this song, when I heard Bessie Jones's voice singing, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road," I knew what she was talking about. She was talking about keeping your feet on the road. She was talking about making a way out of no way. They'd been singing that song, she said, since her grandfather was in slavery. "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, I know the road." I say, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, I know the road." Well, don't you know the road by the singing of the song? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Don't you know the road by the singing of the song? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, don't you know the road by the praying of the prayer? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Don't you know the road by the praying of the prayer? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, yes, my Lord." I say, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, I know the road." Well, don't you know the road by the clapping of the hands? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Don't you know the road by the clapping of the hands? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, now, don't you know the road by the going on home? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Don't you know the road by the going on home? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, yes, my Lord." I say, "Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah. Well, I don't know, but I got told the streets of heaven are paved with gold. I'm gonna put on my glory shoes. I'm gonna walk that mighty fine road. A little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Little David, play upon your harp. Hallelujah. Well, don't you know the road by the clapping of the hands? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Don't you know the road by the clapping of the hands? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, yes, my Lord. I say, sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, my Lord, I know the road. Sheep, sheep, don't you know the road? Yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, yes, Lord, I know the road. Well, I say, yes, Lord, I know the road. Let's go here. So yes, I thank my mother for getting us in the building so I could hear those voices, hear those. What would happen is sometimes we, as kids, we would try to get out of the service. A Sunday morning service went from 10:30 to about 1. I don't know what your churches were like, but that's a long time. And so we would try often to get ourselves, out of the pews and ask if we could go downstairs to the bathroom, which just meant we were going to go downstairs and waste some time. And so, but the great thing about going downstairs in the church was that you actually got to hear what they were singing in a muffled sort of way. Now you're downstairs and you hear the voices, but also what you heard was those feet on the floor. And it's amazing to me that even in all these years later, if I sit and think about that, I can still hear those feet on the floor. They sort of got into your bones. We sang all kinds of songs in that church, Not only the spirituals, but we sang a lot of hymns and a lot of anthems. And hymns have always been interesting to me, just in terms of the song form. So one day I found myself, I was sitting at an elementary school, which I do a lot. I've been, over the course of years, played a lot of schools across the country, and it's been one of the places, particularly in this day and age with everything that's going on in the world, I love being in schools because it's one of the places I get my hope. Sitting in and doing shows for, school audiences and looking into their faces. I made a promise to myself just a few years ago, after doing this for, about 40 years, that I would sort of reinvigorate myself. So every school I play, I could have 200 or 500 kids in an auditorium, And I made a promise to myself that during that show, I will make an effort to see every face in the room. Because as the songs go, as the stories go, and I see their faces rising up in hope, joy, sadness, whatever they're mirroring, their filters are very present. But to see the joy on those faces, regardless of what's happening in the world, just rekindles the hope in me. But it was on one of those mornings that I was sitting in a school in Connecticut that was 11 miles away from Newtown, Connecticut. As a matter of fact, the principal came in and told me that day that they had some of the teachers and some of the staff from the Sandy Hook School coming over because they were only 15 minutes away, and they were going to come over and talk. It was around the 5th anniversary of the shootings at Sandy Hook. And he and I had a conversation just about, what they were going to do that day, and then my brain started working, and as often happens when I'm in the moments before a show is happening, seems to be a very fertile time for my brain to decide it wants to write a song. And I used to have to find some paper to write down, but fortunately now I just grab my cell phone, put it on record, and I just put down whatever it is I'm thinking. So that morning, as I sat and I watched those students coming in, taking their seats, thinking about those folks who were coming over from Newtown, this happened. 5 years now gone, and here we stand, in ruins on this troubled land. Young hearts lie dead in fields of shame. Their loved ones weep, yet nothing's gained. Some say this is a right we choose, one God decrees we should not lose. So as we fight to make a stand, the blood pours out across the land. So sing it loudly as you go, a sad refrain we've come to know. Our hearts remind us once again, violence is a bitter friend. We seem to love the thrill of war. Our passions fail us to the core. Our spent emotions we deny as hope fades out and millions die. This is no noble cross we bear, no sacred cause lies hidden there. As human lives are passed for gold, we sacrifice both young and old. So sing it loudly as you go, this sad refrain we've come to know. Our hearts remind us once again, violence is a bitter friend. No more auction block for me. No more auction block for me. No more, no more. No more auction block for me. No more. Our silence never set us free. So now our stories must be told, and since we've all been bought and sold, it's up to us to shift the frame so future hearts won't bear this pain. So sing it loudly as you go, so every child might come to know that hope lives on. That's where we start, and love will guide the wounded heart. It's a long time since I was in a school and as those kids, sitting there But recently, I've been doing work with the Kennedy Center for about 35 years, something like that. About 35 years ago, a woman named Lynn Silverstein, who was working at the Kennedy Center in the education department, tricked a bunch of us into a program. She did it in a very easy way. Most of us were, there were three musicians and a dancer and a poet and two drama actors. And what they did was they offered us all gigs. I was going down to do a week of programs in the Terrace Theater at the Kennedy Center, and I get this phone call from Lynn Silverstein. She said, "Oh, I see that you're going to be in Terrace Theater doing programs all week." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, well, while you're here, would you mind doing an afternoon program for some teachers?" And I thought, "Oh, yeah, that'd be fun. We get paid, right?" And she said, "Oh, yes, we'll pay you." And I said, "Great." And she said, "Well, send me an outline on what you might do." And thought, well, we thought this would just be a thing. We'd just put together some songs and go in and sing the songs with these folks and answer any questions they had, maybe get them singing a little bit, and then we'd go get our check and go away. This was not what they had planned. She said, send an outline. So we sent an outline, and a week went by, and then she called up and she said, "Oh, I really loved your outline. It was very good." She didn't say nice. She said, very good outline. And if you could just look at the first two things that you were going to do, I know you're doing this on the Underground Railroad, so if you could just break out a couple of ideas about things that you really want to tag. And we said, oh, okay, fine. Well, we can do that. And so we sent it in. And then she waited another week, and she came back and said, "That was really good. Now, I have some ideas about the first two things that you said." And this continued over about a 6-week period. And before we knew it, we had a 3-hour teacher workshop. And we're kind of like, who is this woman? Well, as it turns out, she was part of a team at the Kennedy Center that had this vision that they put together. They were going to invite artists to work with teachers or educators of all kinds. And then they were going to get people all around the country in every state who were in schools to work with art centers that were near them. And they were going to bring artists in, and they were going to do this collaborative thing, and it was arts and education, and we had no idea. And now this has gone for about, I would say, 40 years, and now they have over 400 artists and art centers and school centers all around the nation. And it's this brilliant program. And 2 weeks ago, I flew in because they opened the new Reach Center at the Kennedy Center. What they did was they took a chunk of the front lawn and one of the parking areas, and they built a $1 billion facility that they now have performance, workshop, education spaces, and it's this amazing thing that they broke out over 16 days, a festival celebrating this wonderful outreach that the Kennedy Center now has to artists and educators around the world. So I went in to do 2 days of programming for them, and as I was with those teachers, I was sharing with them that, my education and my connection to the arts started in a much simpler way than everyone is doing now with all these integrated studies and these amazing collaborations between artists and teachers, but also different kinds of teachers in different disciplines. I told them that the first real lesson that I remember sticking with me was in 2nd grade. And it was a day when my teacher, Miss Churn, came into the room and she said, "Okay, children, today we're going to sing a very special song." And she said, "This is a song written by a man who travels all around, and he writes songs about people and places that he visits, and we're going to sing this song." And I don't remember whether she wrote it on the board or whether she passed out mimeograph sheets, which were always wonderful because, well, those of you of a certain age know what you had to do with a mimeograph sheet. Oh, yes. Brain cells disappearing all over America. Yeah. But however she got us the words, we all joined together because that's what we did at the Grover Cleveland Elementary School. And we all sang, "This land is your land, this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. Oh, this land was made for you and me." Yes, Miss Churn led us that day in that song. And as I say, I don't really remember whether she went into any depth about the song at all, but that just the very fact that we were singing this song opened up some new vistas for all of us there in that school at 18th and Tioga. You know, it was an amazing thing. Suddenly, now I had some information about the state of California. There's a state in California, New York. I knew nothing about that before that day. Had no idea what a redwood tree was. Now, of course, in our classroom today, we would do a unit on, redwood trees, or we would do a unit on California. Or, since it was written by Woody Guthrie, who was from Oklahoma, we would certainly take a look at Oklahoma from a variety of different perspectives. We didn't do any of that. All we did was sing the song. As I went walking that ribbon of a highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. Oh, sing it. An amazing thing. That is the first time I remember hearing that song. And as I said, after I got old enough, then of course I started traveling around. And once I became a musician, then suddenly I knew who Woody Guthrie was. And I'm going to a lot of the places where he was. I've been to Oklahoma, and I've been to the Northwest, and I've seen redwood trees and all of that. But that little perspective shift in that song, it's an amazing thing. We talk about all of the things that make a difference in our lives. So I carried that song around, and every now and then would sing it. And it was one day, actually, that I was in Philadelphia again. I was there, actually, because I was doing a program at the African American Museum downtown. And there were about 300 kids who were coming into their auditorium, and I was going to do a program on civil rights. And as I got there, I set up, and I did my sound check, and then I'm waiting, and I'm sitting on stage, just kind of as they come in, and they're filling in the seats. And I'm watching them come in. And then the last group comes in, and they're sitting in the back. But it's a very small auditorium, and I'm looking at the back, and I see this group come in. And at the back of the group, there's a woman who looks very familiar. And I'm looking at the group, I'm looking at this woman, I'm thinking, my goodness gracious, that sure does look like Miss Churn. All these years later, she hadn't changed a bit. And I thought, well, my goodness, that's got to be her, but I won't know for sure until after the program. So I went ahead and I did the program, and at the end of the show, I came down and I waited because they were filing out into the rest of the museum. They were going to do some projects based on the stuff that I had done. And there she was, unmistakably Miss Churn. And so I waited until she dismissed her last two kids, and then I stepped over and I said, "Excuse me, but are you Miss Churn?" I didn't know whether she'd gotten married over those years, but as it turns out, she turned to me and she said, "Yes, I'm Charlotte Churn. Yes, I am." And of course, I didn't know her name was Charlotte because teachers in those days didn't have first names. But she said, "Yes, I said, "Are you still teaching at Cleveland?" She says, "Oh, yes, I've been there now for over 30 years." I said, "Wow, how amazing." She says, "But oh, you're the performer. You were just up on stage." I said, "Yeah." She says, "Oh, wonderful program. My kids will get so much out of that. But you seem to know me somehow." I said, "Yeah, yeah." And she says, "Oh, are you related to one of my students?" I said, "Oh, no." I said, "Actually, I have to tell you, I had you in second grade." And of course, I was all white-haired by that time. She looked at me, and that bright smile that she was dimmed a little. And she looked at me square in the face, and she said, "You had me in second grade?" I said, "Yeah, I'm afraid so." And then she just kind of shook her head and drifted off a little, and she said, my, I really must retire." I said, "Well, that being as it is, I was able to tell her about that day that I remembered, her singing that song with us. And she had no memory of doing it. But I said, that song, as you can see now, I'm traveling around the country. And I've made friends with Pete Seeger and other people who knew Woody Guthrie. And so I wasn't able to tell her that day that I'd actually written a song about Woody Guthrie because that, in fact, would not happen for another 8 years. But I did find out later, just a couple of years ago, that she ended up teaching in that school for 37 years. And one of the other teachers that I met told me that she also taught him how to teach when he came there. So we never know what some little piece of information that we give to some young person or some not so young person might bear out over time. Because in 2012, well, there was a reason to write a song about Woody Guthrie. And if you are willing, I'd like you to sing the chorus with me. It goes like this. We'll do it line by line. First line. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Sing that. Roll on, Woody, roll on. You taught us well by singing your song. Now we're here to carry it on. Now we're here to carry it good. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Last line. Roll on, Woody, roll on. It'll come around. You were born with the heart of a cowboy. Okima, the place you began. And right from the start, the road called to your heart. So you set off to discover the land. Oh, you hitched and you rode and you rambled with a passion that burned to be free. And you lifted the stories of all that you met from the Dust Bowl of humanity. Roll on, Woody. Roll on, Woody, roll. You taught us well. You taught us well by singing your song. Now we're here. Now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Sing again. Roll on, Woody, roll on. You taught us well by singing your song. Now we're here. Now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. From the farmers, the miners, the old and the young, to the refugee women and men, you made your name by exposing the games that kept good folks facing the wind. And in all of your years of hard traveling, you often said you had no choice. Your words made it clear. Don't you give in to fear and speak out so they hear your voice. You took a stand and roll on, Woody, roll on. You took a stand by singing your song. Now we're here. Now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Oh yes, roll on, Woody, roll on. You took a stand by singing your song. And now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. From the pastures of plenty to Columbia's shores, from the mountains right down to the sea, you said that this land was our land to have, and it's a land made for you and for me. Oh, but now, dear Woody, the tables are turned as the forces of hate try to win. Oh, but we're bound for glory. We're up to this fight, and we won't be denied in the end. You gave us hope, so roll on, Woody, roll on. You gave us hope by singing your song, and now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Oh, yes, roll on, Woody, roll on. You gave us hope by singing your song, and now we're here to carry it on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Roll on, Woody, roll on. Woody, roll on. Well, did my Lord deliver Daniel? Did my Lord deliver Daniel? Did my Lord deliver Daniel? Did my Lord, yeah. Did my Lord deliver Daniel? He was in the lion's den, sat with those three boys in the fiery furnace till they could get cool again. Sat with the people by the edge of the sea, was with Jonah in the belly of the whale. Well, when my people heard those stories, they said, there ain't no way we're gonna fail, 'cause we're gonna wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, wade in the water. Wade in the water. Wade in the water. God's gonna trouble the water. Oh, who with those children all are dressed in red? God's gonna trouble the water. They must be the ones that Moses led, say, God's gonna trouble the water. Who with those children all are dressed in white? God's gonna trouble the water. Must be the ones getting ready to fly. God's gonna trouble the... Get in the water, say, wade in the water. Wade in the water, children, wade. Oh, yeah. God's gonna trouble, say, wade in the water. Wade, children, wade in the water. God's gonna trouble. Hey, who are those children all are dressed in blue? They must be the ones that made it through. God's gonna trouble the... Hey, 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 who are those children all dressed in black? God's gonna trouble the water. They never, 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 oh, never, 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 no, 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 never, 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 no, never, 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 no, never, no, never, no, never, no. They're just not going back. Well, if you don't believe you can be set free, you say, God's gonna trouble the water. Well, it's up to you and it's up to me, say. Well, you don't think you can be redeemed, just follow me down to Jordan Street. God's gonna trouble the wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade, oh hey, God's gonna trouble, sing it one more time, say wade in the water, wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water, say God's gonna trouble the water, oh God's gonna trouble the water, children say, ta-da-ba-doo-ba-doo-ba-da-da-da, say, su-ba-doo-ba-da-ba, ya-ba-da-ba-da, su-da-doo-ba-doo-ba-da-da-ba-da-da, God's gonna trouble the water. Yeah, can I get an amen? It has been some year for all of us, and one of the bright spots of my year was this summer. Back around February, I got a call from two of my cousins. Some of you have heard me talk about the fact that in 1992, one of my relatives in Virginia did our family genealogy, and my cousin on my mother's side, Faye Hewlett Gray, got all inspired by roots, and it took her years. You know, she didn't have Ancestry.com. So she got stories from her mother and her grandmother, and then from some, they all lived in Richmond and Culpeper and Ashland, and so she compiled all the stories and began to follow the leads, and they led her into county records and then to a plantation, actually a property in Ashland, Virginia. And she started to research that property and that family, the Wickham family, which she knew about the Wickhams because they still had some connections. We still had a lot of connections, as it turns out, because in 1992 we had a reunion in Richmond, and she gave us all booklets, these documents that she produced, telling how our family started. We started as people in slavery on a plantation called Hickory Hill. And that plantation was in Ashland, Virginia. It was a very prominent place. It was owned by Williams Carter Wickham and his wife, Mary. Mary, cousin to Robert E. Lee. The Wickham family had been in Virginia for a long, long time. Very prominent. Williams Carter Wickham was a state legislator for about 12 years. He was president of the state legislature for 2 years. He was a Confederate colonel. Even though he voted against secession, he served in the Confederate Army and was a cavalry general, actually. After the war, he was an opportunist, and he got himself appointed president of the C&O Railroad. And he was a mover and shaker in his time. He and his wife, Mary, owned 257 slaves. And Williams Carter Wickham, being a man of his time and a slave owner, he had 5 children by one of his slaves that he bought from the West Indies, a slave named Bib Hanna. And those 5 children are the start of my family. So Williams Carter Wickham sent 2 families, not an unusual thing, off into the future. And so my cousin gave us this information, and long story short, holding that information over a few years, about 6 years later, I shared that information with a class that I was teaching in North Carolina at the Swananoa Gathering. And one of my students came up and she said, you know, I grew up in Richmond and I know the Wickham family. I haven't been in touch with them for years and years, but I grew up with Lisa Wickham. I know her sister Wallace and her brother George, and you're related to them. I said, yeah, apparently I am. She said, wow, that's a good story. She said, you know, Lisa and I were best friends, and I can't believe we haven't been in touch. She says, it's been over 30 years, but I think I'm gonna try to find her. She said, if I find her, are you interested in talking to her? And I said, oh, yeah, that'd be great. I don't think I meant it, but, you know, that's what you say, you know? So we went our separate ways, and 2 years went by. I completely forgot about it until the email showed up. Franny Oates, who I just had dinner with this past summer back in Ashland, she said, I found Lisa, and we had a wonderful dinner. She is just as crazy as ever, and we had so much fun talking about our past. And then I told her your story, and she wants to talk to you. Here's her number. She said to call her any day. She works from home. And I thought, wonderful. You know, sometimes you don't want to know what you know. But thinking about that, you know, this completed a cycle for me because having that information, I wasn't always sure what I wanted to do. Even though I travel around the world talking about slavery and civil rights and reconciliation and all of those things, the things that Laurie was talking about, the connections, positivity. Those conversations are not always positive. The Jefferson and Hemmings family have gone through a lot of stuff to get where they've gotten. And I found myself challenged because I hadn't used that phone number for 3 weeks. So one day I decided to pick up the phone. And I called the number, 2 rings, and a voice answered. And I said, hi, my name is Reggie Harris. And before I could get another word out, she said, where have you been? I said, excuse me? She said, you were supposed to call me 3 weeks ago. I said, well, you know, my life is kind of complicated. And she said, oh, yeah, whatever. You know, she says, I've been waiting for your call. I can't believe it. I understand we're cousins. And I thought, oh, okay, here it comes. She's going to ask for proof. But she just said, how old are you? And I said, excuse me? She said, how old are you? I told her, and she said, well, you know, when I grew up, we didn't have a lot of cousins. Our family was kind of complicated that way, too. But I love having cousins. And if you're my cousin, I'm 2 years older than you, so that means I can boss you around. I said, this is a pushy one. But we had the most remarkable 2-hour conversation. And then I told her, I said, I'll send you this document I have. And she said, well, okay, I have some things about our family I can send you. And when are you coming down here? Well, it would actually be a couple of years before we actually got to meet. But I actually met her sister Wallace right here in Arlington. Because at that time, this is about 8 years ago, she was the associate superintendent of schools here. And I was playing a school here in Arlington, and I got an email from Wallace saying, I see you're playing one of my schools. I'm coming to the show. So we had a really great time and went out to lunch. And then 2 years later, I went to Richmond, and Lisa and I went to her apartment, and she said, you'll stay here. And we had dinner. Her brother George came over. He lives about 2 blocks away. He's a teacher in Richmond, actually just retired this year. And we sat around the table, and we ate, and we looked at all the documents, and we talked about our feelings, our emotions about having this connection, and talked about the good things and some of the difficulties. And then Lisa said, you know, if I know you're leaving tomorrow, but if you have a little time, the property is right up the road. It's about 25 miles up the road, and I know where it is, obviously. We used to go there all the time. And George says, yeah, it was sold to somebody else. We don't really know who owns it now. And Lisa said, yeah, but I know they're not there a lot. I thought, where's this going? She said, well, if you have a little time, we can drive up there in the morning, and then I'll walk you around the property. You'd have to be willing to hop a small fence. I thought to myself, okay, let's see. So we'll get in our cars, we'll drive north, we'll get off the highway, we'll drive out into the country, in a little secluded place, 3,000 acres of land on a dirt road. And then we're going to hop over a small fence onto somebody else's land, and I'm going to be walking around with a white woman I don't know that well. What could go wrong in Virginia? But that's what we did. And I will be honest, I will tell you that on that day, we drove those miles and we went down that dirt road and we came out to this clearing and we were sitting there, and about 75 yards up over that small fence was the main house. And I found it impossible to get out of my car for 10 minutes. Lisa was very patient. She just kind of waited, and I finally got myself over the emotions of it, and I got out and I joined her and we negotiated the fence, and then we began to walk, and she began to point out the landmarks, the office building and the gardens that were now in disarray. But she told me that in their day, in the 1800s, people used to come from all around the world to see them. Admiral Robert Perry brought trees back from Japan that are still there. And we found ourselves up on the porch of the house, looking in the windows, and she would point out things, but mostly we just kind of looked. Every now and then our eyes would meet, and neither one of us managed to find the right word to say in that moment. Some awkward things came out. We were there for about an hour and a half. We made our way back to our cars, and we hugged, and I thanked her for bringing me, and still, I got in my car, I went north, she went south, and 2 weeks went by, and then I picked up the phone again. Because I was starting to get an idea about a song, and I said, Lisa, I've been thinking a lot about our day at Hickory Hill, and she said, yeah, I have too. I knew you were going to call me sooner or later. I said, yeah, well, I said, I'm working on something, and I wonder if you would be able to share with me what it was that you were thinking when our eyes met. I know those were awkward moments. That conversation went for about 3 hours. And we talked about our day together at Hickory Hill. Bowing fields to the horizon, the ghosts of autumn catch the wind. Memories of those saints and sinners gather round to haunt us once again. Now we're finally here together, standing silent face to face. Secret family undercover, born of shame, saved by hope and grace. Hickory Hill, we're on hallowed ground, walking side by side, wondering what we found. Hearts break open wide across the great divide. I can see the questions in your eyes now that we are home again. They celebrate the grand illusion, and they write it up for all to see. But in that mystery of confusion, there lies a truth that might one day set us free. So now our stories come together across these fields of broken dreams, and the blood that binds us all together, oh, is indeed much thicker than it seems. Oh, Hickory Hill, we're on a hallowed ground, walking side by side, wondering what we found. Hearts break open wide across the great divide. Can you see the questions in my eyes now that we are home again? We are home again. Oh, Hickory Hill, we're on solid ground, standing side by side, wondering what we found. Hearts break open wide across the great divide. Can you hear those demons as they die, now that we are home again? I'd like to invite Lori and Fred up to join me here for a song. Please give them a round of applause. Oh, yeah. I was never a fan of doo-wop music, but it was a very big part of the time when I was growing up, especially in Philadelphia. You know, guys would travel around the city at night and they would sing in the summertime, gathering on street corners, and you know, we've seen it on the movies. They were all out there, and sometimes they would actually get signed to a record deal, you know. But as I said, I was never a real big fan. Although we saw these guys all the time, you know, my friends and I would be out during the summer and, you know, hot summer nights, and we'd be trying to stay out of, well, just kind of have our parents not be aware of us, because if you just kind of kept to yourselves, even though we couldn't stray far from the house, well, they wouldn't call you in before 10 o'clock. And we were trying to stay out as late as we possibly could. And sitting up on the porches, you know, our parents would be up there and they would be kind of talking to each other all the way down the block. And the guys would come by, wah, 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 wah. And they would talk about them and say, those no good guys. We don't like them coming around here. But my friends and I, we always kind of loved the way they sounded, you know. So the guys would come down the street, and there were always like 6 or 7 of them. They go out on the street corner at 17th and Erie and stand under the spotlight. Why do fools fall in love? Or whatever it was they were singing. One night I remember saying to my friend Kevin as we sat there trying to stay out of the way, I said, you know, Kevin, those guys aren't all that nice, and I mean, they're kind of trouble, but one day, I'm going to be over in that corner singing with them because I can sing. Kevin said, really? And I said, yeah. And from the back of the porch, I heard my mother say, no, you ain't. And she was right. Never got over there with those guys, but when I decided to write this song about something that's near and dear to my heart, well, doo-wop seemed to be the best form to use. When you're riding in your car, close to home or afar, on the highway or just around the bend. Well, you never have to fear when your seatbelt is near. Your seatbelt wants to be your friend. In the sun, in the rain, out in Frisco, up in Maine, well, it knows just how far your body can bend. If you let it help you out, there will be no room for doubt, 'cause your seatbelt can save you from the end. Because it's a seatbelt, oh, it's a seatbelt. You know it's a passive restraint for you. And if you use it, oh, it will keep you on the side of the windshield of life. Only you can be strong when your friends say you're wrong, call you wimpy, or use your name in vain. But how bad can it be? Stop the car, one push and you're free. It's a seatbelt, not a ball and chain. I know as I drive around and I see people still not using their seatbelts, I'm just puzzled that they don't want to be safe. In many places, it's the law, click it or ticket. And I hear people say things like, oh, I'm just going down to the Piggly Wiggly. It's not that far. I don't need a seatbelt, and if God had wanted us to wear seatbelts, she would have put buckles on our hips. Well, I know one thing. This is my only hit because Click and Clack, the Tapper Brothers, put it on their show. Oh, it's a seatbelt. Oh, it's a seatbelt. Thank you very much. You know it's a passive restraint, a passive restraint. It's not aggressive at all. If you use it, oh, it will keep you on the side of the windshield of life. Oh, only you can be strong when your friends say you're wrong, call you wimpy, or use your name in vain. But how bad can it be? Stop the car, one push and you're free. It's a seatbelt, not a ball and chain. You may think they're stupid, but you'll be alive to complain. Thank you. Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight and joining us for this wonderful evening. And I did bring CDs with me. They're in the back. They're $15 or 2 for $25 tonight. I brought enough for each of you to take at least 2 of them home, so don't be shy. Just, pony up. Thank you again to Charlotte and to all the folks here at St. John's for creating this wonderful space. Thank you to Laurie and Fred for a beautiful set and a wonderful, wonderful presence. You all are just wonderful human beings in the world. And if you, I have a mailing list in the back. If you want to sign the mailing list, I put out every month and a half. I just send out a little blurb on where I'm going to be or things about projects I'm working on. As I mentioned, I am working on a new recording with Greg Greenway on our show Deeper Than the Skin. But I'm also, next week I'll be leading 35 people, or actually co-leading 35 people on a bus through Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee for our Living Legacy Fall pilgrimage. If you want to pick up some cards I have in the back from the Living Legacy, think about doing a pilgrimage with us. I'm really excited that on the next pilgrimage, two of my cousins from the Wickham family are going to go with me. They're going to be on the bus, Wallace and also George. And a friend of mine who's a rabbi in Woodstock, New York, Jonathan Kliegler, he and his wife are coming on the bus, so we're going to have a really fascinating time, stopping at about 6 places a day in Alabama and Mississippi, and then eventually ending up at the Civil Rights Museum in Memphis, Tennessee. And that is a lot of the work that I'm about these days, in addition to the schools and the concerts that I'm doing. Connecting communities through song. There's so many of us who get to do this for a living, and we get to see some of the positive stories that are out there amidst all of the tragedies that our nation and our world are going through. And to spread the story that, everything that's happening in the world is not bad news. Everything that's happening in the world, it is a depressing thing to see people working so hard to disconnect people, but the fact of the matter is song and story and people in their lives are still connecting. And so I'm going to end with this song, actually. A song I wrote years ago, and at the time that I wrote it, as soon as I wrote this song, peace started breaking out all around the world. And I thought, oh my goodness, that'll be a short shelf life song. Because obviously now we're on our way to peace and justice and harmony. Well, not so fast. But I still believe, I say deep in my heart, I do believe that we shall overcome someday. But that road has never been easy. And I am so happy with things that come out like the 1619 Project and all of the amazing series that we now see that are enlightening the world as to what the story really is. The story is that fighting for peace and justice has always been hard. And it's always been a few people doing it. But those few people have managed to change the world, and we can change the world again. The name of this song is All My Relations. The Lakota phrase that inspired this is Matakwiasin. Thank you for the great sound, by the way. There's a rhythm that flows from the universe to a heart that beats deep in the earth. It touches us all through the fertile ground and welcomes the day of our birth. There's a hunger that burns in the human mind with a force that disables us all. If we let it take over, we often find that we stand with our backs to the wall. Then we fight with our neighbors, we fight with our friends, we fight with the land on which our future depends. We fight ourselves for control. Slowly we learn that if we pray for peace in Jerusalem, we must work for peace in our soul. And the word from on high says, give it one more try. All my relations speak to my soul. My relations speak to my soul. The struggle spills into our innocence like a poison you can't wash away. But we will not accept this as evidence that we have to live in this way. Oh no. So we we come to this place with an open hand. We leave our divisions behind. And to all who will listen and understand, we embrace as our family in time. And still we fight with our neighbors, we fight with our friends, we fight with the land on which our future depends. We fight ourselves for control. Slowly we learn that if we pray for peace in Afghanistan, must work for peace in our soul. And the word from on high says, give it one more try. All my relations speak to my soul. My relations speak to my soul. Oh, and the word inside says, give it one more try. All my relations speak to my soul. My relations speak to my soul. If we pray for peace in America, must work for peace in our souls. And the word from inside says, give it one more try. All my relations speak to my soul. My relations speak to my soul. All my relations speak to my soul. My relations speak to my soul. For the future of the earth, for all beings great and small, wisdom of the universe lives within us all. For the children, for our dreams, peace and freedom is the call. We must work until the day when it's true for all. When it's true for all.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you.
Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Sing it with me. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let no ignorance turn me round, turn me round, turn me round. Ain't gonna let no ignorance turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let racism turn me round, oh, turn me round, oh, turn me round. Ain't gonna let racism turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let homophobia turn me round, yeah, turn me round. keep on walking, yeah, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let politicians turn me round, oh, turn me round, hey, turn me round. Ain't gonna let politicians turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up to freedom land. Ain't gonna let greed and avarice turn me round, oh, turn me round, hey, turn me round. Ain't gonna let greed and avarice turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Ain't gonna let my silence turn me round, no, turn me round. Ain't gonna let my silence turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Oh no, ain't gonna let nobody turn me round, oh, turn me round. Ain't gonna let nobody turn me round. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Oh, I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. I'm gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching up the freedom land. Keep hope alive, keep singing. Y'all walking down that freedom road, we're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down that freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Walking down the freedom road, we're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down the freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Oh mama, it's been so hard. I look at the world and my heart gets heavy. She says, child, keep your hands on the plow. You gotta make a new way. Oh papa, it's been so long. A voice cries out, you're just not ready. He says, keep your eyes on the prize. We're gonna make it someday. Oh, we're walking down the freedom road. We're moving, chasing that dream. Walking down the freedom road, one step closer to the promised land. Some say we're wasting our time. We're moving, chasing that dream. Not gonna pay them no mind. One step closer to the promised land.